1 second later, the kidnapping no one saw coming, the city pulsed with life, its neon veins glowing against the night sky, streets buzzing with honking cars and rushing footsteps. Nobody noticed the van parked across from the bus stop, its windows tinted black, its engine humming softly like a predator waiting in tall grass. Alina, a 20-year-old student, emerged from the university gates with her backpack slung over one shoulder, her scarf wrapped tight against the cold. Her phone buzzed with a message from her mother, asking when she'd be home. She typed back a quick reply with a smile, completely unaware that her life was about to split into a before and after. The man in the van adjusted his gloves, his eyes locked on her through the tinted glass. He had studied her routine for weeks, every step, every pause, every distraction. To him, she was not a person, she was a plan. And tonight the plan would unfold. The bus stop was quiet. A flickering streetlight bathed the pavement in sickly yellow. Alina scrolled through her phone, tapping her foot to music only she could hear. The van's door slid open silently. Shadows moved faster than she could react. 1 second later, a hand clamped over her mouth. Another grabbed her waist, dragging her backward. Her phone slipped from her hand, its screen flashing with her mother's call before shattering against the ground. Her muffled scream was swallowed by the roar of a passing truck. The van door slammed shut. Tires screeched against asphalt. Within seconds, the bus stop was empty, the night returning to its normal rhythm as though nothing had happened. Inside the van, Alina fought with everything she had, nails scratching, feet kicking, lungs burning. But the man was prepared. He forced a syringe into her arm, and the world collapsed into darkness. When she woke, the air was damp, smelling of mildew and rust. She was in a windowless room, wrists and ankles bound with thick rope, her mouth gagged with tape. A single bulb swung above her, its weak glow carving shadows across the concrete walls. Her heart pounded. She tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the gag. She tried to move, but the ropes bit into her skin. She was trapped, and the silence pressed down heavier than chains. The kidnapper appeared from the shadows. His face was hidden beneath a mask, his eyes cold and calculating. He said nothing, only scribbled notes in a leather book as though she were part of some experiment. Alina's fear became his fuel. Back in the city, panic began. Alina's parents called her phone again and again, only to hear the hollow voice of voicemail. By morning, they contacted the police, their voices trembling as they filed the report. A missing persons poster was printed with her photo, her smile haunting every corner of the city. Friends lit candles at the university gates. Strangers shared her photo online. News anchors repeated her name until the whole city seemed to whisper it. But for all the noise, there were no answers. The van had vanished into the cracks of the city. Days bled into one another in captivity. Alina was given just enough food to survive, just enough water to keep her conscious. The silence became unbearable, broken only by the creak of the door and the scrape of her captor's boots. She fought to hold on, to remember who she was beyond the ropes. She studied everything, the pattern of his footsteps, the sound of his keys, the timing of his visits. She memorized cracks in the wall, counted the seconds between his movements. Survival became her only subject, and she studied it with the intensity of a scholar. Her family's grief grew heavier. Her mother stopped sleeping. Her father spent nights plastering streets with posters. Her brother screamed at the police for answers they couldn't give. The house filled with prayers and silence, each room haunted by her absence. The city began to stir with anger. Students marched with signs demanding justice. Neighbors formed search parties. Reporters swarmed police stations. Her name was no longer just a headline. It was a cry for justice, a plea that echoed across every street. The kidnapper watched the news, his mask hiding a twisted smile. The louder they screamed her name, the more powerful he felt. He left newspapers near her, circled her photo in red ink, forcing her to see the world's desperation. To him, fear was not a mistake. It was the goal. But Alina refused to break. She whispered her own name through cracked lips, reminding herself she was still alive. She remembered her family's laughter, her brother's teasing, her mother's warm meals, her father's protective voice. Each memory became a weapon, each thought a rope keeping her from falling into the pit of despair. The 12th night brought a shift. The ropes on her wrists had loosened from days of struggle, the fibers fraying against the sharp edge of determination. She waited, her breath steady, her heartbeat counting down. The door creaked open. The kidnapper entered, confident as always. But this time Alina was ready. She slipped one hand free, tearing the tape from her mouth. A scream ripped from her throat, echoing off the concrete walls like thunder. Startled, the man lunged at her. But Alina moved with desperate speed. She grabbed the swinging bulb, smashed it against the wall, and clutched the shard of glass like a dagger. Her hands trembled, but her eyes burned. Her scream carried through cracks in the building, louder than before. This time someone heard. Neighbors who had ignored strange noises now reached for their phones, calling the police. Sirens wailed in the distance, slicing through the night air. The kidnapper panicked. His control, built carefully over weeks, collapsed in seconds. He tried to silence her, but Alina slashed wildly with the glass, forcing him back. Blood stained his gloves. His mask slipped. His empire of fear was breaking apart. The sirens grew louder, echoing through the empty streets. A sound that made Alina's heart surge with hope and the kidnapper's eyes widen with panic. He stumbled backward, clutching his bleeding hand, his once perfect plan unraveling into chaos. Alina screamed again, louder, her voice raw, filling the building with the sound of resistance. The kidnapper rushed to the door, fumbling with his keys. But his hands shook too violently. For the first time, Alina saw fear in his eyes. The mask that had hidden his humanity slipped aside, revealing nothing but desperation. Police cars screeched to a halt outside, their red and blue lights painting the concrete walls with streaks of salvation. Officers spilled into the building, boots pounding like war drums. The kidnapper froze, torn between fight and flight. But his empire of control was already gone. He lunged toward Alina in a last, desperate attempt to silence her. But the officers burst through the door. Commands filled the air, weapons raised, voices sharp. The man dropped his weapon, falling to his knees, his mask hitting the floor with a hollow thud. His reign of terror ended in a single second. Alina collapsed into the arms of an officer, her body trembling with exhaustion. Her wrists bled from the ropes, her throat burned from screaming. But her spirit refused to break. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered her name, proving to herself she was still alive, still Alina. The officers led her out into the night, the air cool against her tear-streaked cheeks. The city that had forgotten her for 12 nights now roared to life. Neighbors watched from windows, some weeping, some cheering. The girl whose face had haunted posters was no longer a mystery. She was a survivor. Her family rushed to the hospital, tears flooding their faces as they embraced her. Her mother clung to her, whispering prayers of gratitude. Her father kissed her forehead, his voice shaking with relief. Her brother held her hand tightly, vowing never to let go again. Reporters swarmed the scene, microphones thrust forward, cameras flashing. But Alina's eyes were far away, fixed on the night sky. She was free, but freedom carried scars. No headline could capture the darkness she had lived, the silence she had endured, the strength she had found. The kidnapper was led away in chains, his mask gone, his power stripped. The city that once ignored him now cursed his name. His plan, his control, his twisted sense of power had crumbled into dust. All that remained was a man reduced to nothing by the courage of a girl he thought he owned. In the days that followed, the city changed. Candles burned in gratitude. Prayers filled the air. Strangers sent gifts and letters. Alina's name was no longer whispered in fear but spoken in admiration. She had survived. And in surviving, she had given the city hope. But Alina herself carried shadows. At night, she dreamed of ropes tightening, of footsteps echoing, of the syringe pressing into her skin. She woke in cold sweats, the echo of her scream still ringing in her ears. Survival was not the end of fear. It was the beginning of healing. Counselors spoke to her gently, urging her to share her story. At first, she refused. The memories were too raw, too jagged. But slowly, she began to speak. Her voice, shaky at first, grew stronger each time she told the world what had happened. Her words became weapons sharper than glass, cutting through ignorance and fear. The police praised her courage, calling her scream the key that saved her life. Investigators pieced together the man's twisted plans, his months of surveillance, his careful calculations. They discovered notebooks filled with details of his victims-to-be. Alina had not only saved herself, she had saved countless others. Her face returned to the news, but this time not on missing posters. She appeared in interviews, her eyes steady, her voice unwavering. She became a symbol not of fear, but of defiance. Her story spread beyond the city, reaching people across the nation, reminding them that danger hides in shadows, but courage can shatter it. The city that once hurried past her now stopped to thank her. Strangers greeted her with tears, with gratitude, with admiration. Children held her hand. Mothers hugged her tightly. She became more than a survivor. She became a light. Still, Alina remained humble. She returned to her studies, her backpack once again slung over her shoulder, her scarf wrapped tight against the cold. But now, when she walked to the bus stop, she carried more than books. She carried scars, strength. When a story that had changed everything. She never forgot the sound of the van door slamming, the sting of the needle, the suffocating silence of that room. But she also never forgot the moment the ropes loosened, the scream that shattered the dark, the sirens that carried her back to life. Those moments became her compass, guiding her forward. Her family guarded her fiercely, never letting her out of sight for weeks. Her brother walked her to class, her father waited at bus stops, her mother watched her sleep just to be sure she was still there. The house that had once echoed with grief now overflowed with relief. The kidnapper's trial became another spectacle. He sat in the courtroom, shackled, silent. Alina testified with a steady voice, staring directly at the man who had stolen 12 nights of her life. Her words cut deeper than any lawyer's argument. The jury's verdict came swiftly, guilty on every count. His empire of shadows ended in chains. Alina left the courthouse with the sun on her face, the city applauding her courage. She had walked through darkness and returned, carrying light. Her story became legend, a warning, a lesson, a beacon. And though the city returned to its rhythm, its neon lights flickering, its streets humming, one truth remained. 1 second later, everything can change.